Willkommen zu diesem BR24 Live. Wir nehmen euch heute mit gewissermaßen nach Tel Aviv, denn dort steigt seit gestern der erste Israelisch-Europäische Mediengipfel. Und ein Schwerpunktthema dort ist heute das Thema Antisemitismus, Hate Speech und Fake News. Wie können wir dem im Netz begegnen? Dazu hören wir dann gleich auch eine Keynote, auf der die Außenminister von Deutschland und Österreich und der israelische Botschafter in Berlin sprechen werden. Davor wollen wir aber noch einmal nach gestern schauen, nach dem Auftakt. Da ging es nämlich um ein bisschen ein anderes Thema, nämlich wie können wir im digitalen Raum in Zukunft mit dem Thema Holocaust umgehen. Da gab es ein flammendes Plädoyer, gehalten hat es Charlotte Knobloch, die Präsidentin der israelitischen Kultusgemeinde in München und Oberbayern.
Schon die letzten Jahre haben schließlich gezeigt, wie schnell und wie dramatisch sich die öffentliche Debatte online wie offline zuspitzen kann. Wer hätte vor 10 Jahren geglaubt, dass im Jahr 2020 eine offen rechtsextreme Partei im Bundestag sitzt, dass Menschen bei Anschlägen auf Synagogen mitten in Deutschland ums Leben kommen und dass die sozialen Medien, die doch eigentlich die Debatte öffnen und bereichern wollten, zu einer Petrischale von Hass und Extremismus aller Art werden würden. So wenig wie ein Beobachter sich all das vor 10 Jahren hätte vorstellen können, so wenig mögen wir uns heute ausmalen, wie die Welt des Jahres 2030 aussehen wird. Was wir aber schon heute wissen, ist dies: Es gibt Herausforderungen, die angegangen werden müssen. Wir alle haben es in der Hand. Zu den wichtigsten Themen, die die kommenden Jahre bestimmen werden, gehört für mich die Frage nach einer gesellschaftlichen und medialen Strategie für das Gedenken in einer Zeit, in der es immer weniger Zeitzeugen gibt.
Soweit Charlotte Knobloch dazu, wie wir in Zukunft mit der Vergangenheit umgehen können. Aber wie steht es denn um die Gegenwart? Da ist nämlich auch Fakt: Antisemitismus, der ist noch lange nicht vorbei. Im Gegenteil, zurzeit nimmt er sogar zu. In Deutschland gab es im vergangenen Jahr wieder mehr Angriffe gegen Juden und jüdische Einrichtungen. Und auch im Netz, vor allem in sozialen Netzwerken, da begegnet man immer wieder Hasskommentaren mit antisemitischer Richtung. Deshalb soll es jetzt gleich auf dem Panel, auf dem Mediengipfel darum gehen. Zu Gast werden sein der Heiko Maas, der deutsche Außenminister, der österreichische Außenminister Alexander Schallenberg und der israelische Botschafter in Berlin, Jeremy Issacharow. Aber wegen Corona ist das Ganze nur ein virtuelles Event geworden. Eigentlich hätte das alles in Tel Aviv stattfinden sollen. Das heißt, die Gäste sind dann virtuell per Videoschalte zugeschaltet, so wie gestern schon Charlotte Knobloch. Ihr habt es vielleicht gesehen. Wir gehen jetzt mal rüber auf das Programm der Kollegen und wir sehen uns dann später wieder mit einer Einschätzung dazu.
I always find myself kind of torn between these two different issues, the universal and the Jewish.
And actually, there is universal meaning and lessons that you can learn from the Holocaust, but you were saying that it needs to come out from understanding the particular component and character of the event that is the Holocaust.
Yes.
If I can sum up what your main thought is here, and that's making things more accessible and engagement can have the danger of stepping into the just universal aspect without remembering the context and what it was exactly. And you, as a scholar, specifically, and I guess also as educators and all of us, needs to keep this balance and not because it's easily you can draw into the easy part, let's say, of just talking about the universal aspect, which are important, but cannot be disconnected from the particular. Thank you, Professor Castle. It's really thought-provoking and interesting. So actually, in the few moments that we have, do you have some parting thoughts? Eyal, is there something you would like to add?
So, thank you. I want to echo Tobias's question about engagement, and just engagement. There are many ways of engaging people. My main point here was that engagement is not enough. The social media, the digital media usually raises awareness, but you must have you must take the other step and engage in a deeper understanding. And this deeper understanding, this deeper learning, you can draw people through pedagogical means, through authenticity, through personal stories. Like Professor Castle said, don't forget when you use personal stories, don't forget the victims, and don't forget that they weren't born in Auschwitz. Get deeper into their backgrounds, where they were born, what was their Jewish community like, how did it look like? They were normal people like us. And when you show this to students, from my experience, they are engaged, and you create, and don't forget that there's time and place to studying the Holocaust, to the Holocaust itself. This way you create meaning. So when we talk about relevance, we're talking about creating meaning and meaningful learning to students.
That it will make it stay and not just be the touch and go, and will not have the deeper effect. And awareness is important, but you cannot end with that and stop with that. Dana, do you have any parting thoughts before we?
No, I think I would continue from what Ayal said, that sharing the faces, the voices of those who perished and those who survived and finding a way to do it in a way that's relevant and meaningful for the public is an ongoing challenge. It's something that we really deal with, and every single day, not just how people engage with us, how we are engaging and what we're doing and what we're sharing. And I think I would sum up by actually a tweet, ironically, that somebody tweeted who had given some photos and personal family memories from the Holocaust, letters, etc., to Yad Vashem. And he tweeted that he was so happy to do that. And he said, their place in history is now in the future. That was his tweet. And I think for us, that is probably
that's our main challenge.
Yes, that is our challenge, ongoing.
All of us who deals with the Holocaust in our daily life, that's our challenge, to make their history in the future, and of course to use everything and to keep the whole idea respectful to the topic and relevant to the public. And this is a huge challenge, as this summit was conducting. So, parting thoughts from Professor Castle before we are separating from this panel? Are you mute? Professor Castle, you just muted yourself, please.
Yeah, I often think of what it means to be in a world where all the survivors are gone. As a child of survivors who's actually born in Europe, I grew up in a survivor community, and now all these people are gone. And their stories, their memories, their experiences, that's the challenge is, how do we convey that? And this has been a major subject of our discussion today. I would like to think going forward that people will read history books, that people will listen to the historians. I know that's not going to happen. And therefore, I really understand that Holocaust awareness in the future, to some degree, is going to depend on film, and it's going to depend on other media. The film that was made of my book on Emanuel Ringelblum reached many, many more people than the actual book. And I think that going forward, one concern that should animate us is to make sure that these representations of the Holocaust in film and in fiction are responsible and have integrity.
Great. Thank you very much. A very important point. So thank you, everyone, for your participation and your enlightened contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What a great discussion. Thank you very much, Iris Rosenberg in Yad Vashem and the panelists. And I also want to thank Simi Allen, who's responsible for the media in Yad Vashem, and he helped us organizing this panel, and he's always very helpful. Heiko Maas, the German foreign minister declared after his visit in Auschwitz, "This is the most horrible place in the world." And the Holocaust was also the reason for him to take over responsibility as a politician. We are very happy that we have now the possibility to listen his thoughts about the topics of our summit. And it's also a great honor for us that the Foreign Minister of Austria, Alexander Schallenberg, is here with us. The Israeli Foreign Minister will be represented by the Israeli ambassador in Berlin, Jeremy Issacharow, who was in former times also involved in the negotiations about a peace deal between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. So we proudly present Minister Maas, Minister Schallenberg, and Ambassador Issacharow.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I saw a photo last week and I just cannot stop thinking about it. It showed a man at a demonstration in Berlin and he was wearing a yellow star. A yellow star like those that Jews were forced to wear in Nazi Germany. Instead of the word Jew, the word unvaccinated was written on it. It made me shook. This cynic appropriation of the Shoah is extremely dangerous. It pushes too far the boundaries of what can be said, and it plays into the hands of those who capitalize on fears linked to the pandemic. To distort many mean to deny, and we have to pay attention to these phenomena from a regulatory as well as a media perspective. Because media do not only report or comment on reality, they also shape it. So it is our political responsibility to take adequate measures and initiatives to fight the new forms of anti-Semitism. In the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, we have initiated a global task force against Holocaust denial and distortion. We have tightened our national criminal law regarding cases of Holocaust denial. For example, German residents spreading such messages from foreign servers will be made liable. In 2017, Germany enacted the Network Enforcement Act to counter racism and anti-Semitism online. In the beginning, there was some critical debate about this so-called Facebook Act. But the years since its enactment in 2017 have proved us right. Now the rules will even be further tightened. I would like to highlight some European responses against xenophobia, anti-Semitism and hate speech online. During our presidency of the Council of the European Union, we are working towards a Europe of security and common values in the digital world. We are firmly committed to democratizing the internet and strengthening the resilience of societies against disinformation online. The protection of our European fundamental rights and our fundamental values is not just an offline issue. We are pushing for the creation of a reliable and resilient European data infrastructure. We will promote a European framework that enforces basic requirements with regard to moderation of content, access to data, and transparency. Here, the Democracy Action Plan of the European Commission matters greatly. During our presidency, we will assess structures and instruments to fight anti-Semitism. We want to lay the foundation for a common European strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, especially in these times of crisis, our diverse media landscape matters even more. You hold a mirror up to our societies and to our political class. And it is in part your responsibility to name very clearly the threats we are facing, especially from the extreme right-wing anti-Semitism. Ladies and gentlemen, besides regulatory measures and media responsibility, we need real-life encounters. Therefore, my colleague Gary Ashkenazi and I support German-Israeli youth exchange. Building bridges between young people prevents the spread of hate and racism. It is the basis for common understanding in pluralistic societies like ours. And it is the basis for common ideas and common future. I welcome the initiative of this meeting today. We need a start-up mentality for our relationship. And we need people to connect and work together who will shape our common future.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and pleasure to speak to you on the occasion of the first European-Israeli Startup Media Summit. Let me start by congratulating the ARD team in Tel Aviv, and in particular TV correspondent Susanne Glass, for this very valuable initiative. We are all aware that media in general, and social media in particular, play an ever more important part in our lives. They are vital for safeguarding our open and democratic societies. We all depend and rely on quick and trustworthy information for forming our views on international and national developments. But Alice, we all know that media can also be misused for disseminating xenophobic and anti-Semitic views, propaganda, and hate speech. No open society can tolerate this. As the Austrian philosopher Karl Popper once stated, and I quote, "If we extend unlimited tolerance even to those who are intolerant, if we are not prepared to defend a tolerant society against the onslaught of the intolerant, then the tolerant will be destroyed, and tolerance with them." End of quote. In this context, let me be very clear. Austria takes its historic responsibility in the fight against anti-Semitism extremely seriously. We are therefore very concerned about rising anti-Semitic attacks all over Europe. Sadly, even Austria is not spared from such shocking events. Most recently, we had to witness the attack of Eli Rosen, the president of the Jewish community in Graz, the second largest city in Austria. The authorities reacted decisively, and the perpetrator was identified very quickly. The Austrian government strongly condemns this attack. There simply cannot be any room for anti-Semitism in our society. We are equally concerned about social media fueling hate speech and anti-Semitic language. The Association of Austrian Internet Providers has set up a virtual contact point for all Internet users who come across neo-Nazi or racist content. Moreover, the Austrian government is currently preparing a set of legislative measures against hate speech online. All at the European and international level, Austria is closely working together with Katharina von Schnurbein, the European Commission's coordinator on combating anti-Semitism. We also cooperate closely with the OSCE personal representative on combating anti-Semitism, Rabbi Andrew Baker. And we welcome the designation of the High Representative of the Alliance of Civilizations, Miguel Moratinos, as United Nations focal point on anti-Semitism. During the Austrian EU presidency in 2018, the European Council for the first time approved a declaration on the fight against anti-Semitism and the development of a common security approach to better protect Jewish communities and institutions all across Europe. Austria is also an active member of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance and was among the first countries officially adopting its definition of anti-Semitism in 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, 75 years after the end of the Second World War and the liberation of the concentration and extermination camps, we all need to remember the atrocities committed against millions. We cannot falter and we cannot hesitate in our fight against anti-Semitism. In this context, education is key. Each year, around 40 Austrian teachers are sent to Israel for a seminar at Yad Vashem and at the Center of Humanistic Education at the Lochamei Hagateot Memorial. Back home, they're passing on the knowledge to their pupils. We have to be aware that we are among the last people who have the chance to listen and to learn from the stories of the survivors of the Shoah. They are a stark reminder of the horrific crimes to which anti-Semitism, other forms of racism and hate can lead. It is our task and responsibility to pass on the stories to future generations. One of those important voices was Gideon Eckhaus, who had to leave Austria in 1938. We mourn his passing away in June this year. He will be missed as an important voice, as witness, and as admonisher. He will be remembered as someone who always focused on the younger generation and will serve us as a model on how to ensure that remembrance of the Shoah stays alive. Against this background, let me tell you that just days ago, on September the 1st, a very far-reaching amendment to the Austrian Nationality Act entered into force, extending the Austrian citizenship to all descendants of victims of Nazi persecution. The past cannot be changed and it cannot be rewritten, but we see this opening of our citizenship as an expression of the Austrian ongoing endeavor for reconciliation and redemption. And I'm happy to say that last week, Ben-Zion Lapid, a Holocaust survivor from Vienna, was the very first person to receive this new Austrian citizenship under this new law. Ladies and gentlemen, Austria and Israel share a long and complex history. And I'm glad to say that today, the ties between our two nations and between our two people are as strong as never before. The Austrian government program contains an explicit commitment to Israel as a Jewish and democratic state and to its security. Our growing economic exchange, our wonderful collaboration in areas such as science and research, as well as our educational, cultural and social relations would merit an own long elaboration. And I'm therefore all the more pleased to be able to speak to you today as part of this very fruitful exchange. I wish you all a successful conference and I thank you for letting me participate. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I'm delighted to be with you today to discuss how we can shape the future discourse regarding anti-Semitism, racism and hate speech. I think this is a very timely subject, particularly at this time, as we see incidents of anti-Semitism, not just words, but also acts being perpetrated in our societies, not only in Germany, in Europe as a whole, and even beyond that. We've seen synagogue shootings not only in Germany, we've seen them also in America, and we've also seen the shootings in Christchurch. And we are now rapidly approaching the first-year anniversary of the attack in Halle. And I only shudder to think how that would have turned out had the perpetrator been able to get inside the synagogue and attack the Jews praying on Yom Kippur, our holiest day in the calendar in the heart of Germany. So we're not just talking about something which is theoretical, we're talking about words, we're talking about hate, and we're talking about words and hate that lead to people being killed. And I think you must emphasize this a great deal. And I think that one of the things I choose to always emphasize before friends, audiences and different gatherings that I attend is that today anti-Semitism and racism is not something which is just directed towards Jews. It is directed towards the Israeli community, but it's also at the end of the day directed to the heart of German democracy and tolerance. And I don't think that any country can survive with its moral identity intact without there being a very strident attempt to wipe out anti-Semitism in all of its forms. And its forms today have changed. Sometimes people don't want to be seen to be anti-Semitic, but they feel there is a certain legitimacy to being anti-Israeli. And therefore you see clear anti-Semitic attitudes coming out in Israeli tropes and various other slogans against the legitimacy of the Jewish country. And I feel that this is something we need to continue to fight. We need to fight anti-Semitism in all of its forms, particularly at a time of Corona, where we've seen the whole of the conspiracy theory industry and anti-Semitic conspiracies blossom and increase to an alarming extent. But I also think that this is a time where we need to pool our resources together and show that it's not the forces of hatred that will succeed here, but the forces of cooperation when we work together within Israel, within Germany, between our two countries, and also with the community, the Palestinian community in Israel, and also with other countries in the area to fight this disease. We need to work together, and we need to make sure that our brand of coexistence and cooperation is what defines us today, and not the diversity of hatred that is sown by some people in our society. Recently, we've seen a very positive event in the Middle East of Israel and the United Arab Emirates agreeing to full normalization between their two countries. This is an opportunity of greater regional dialogue between Israel and its Arab neighbors, and a dialogue that can very dramatically support a very much of an extension of peace between Israel and all of its Arab neighbors, including with the Palestinians. So I hope that this is a glimmer of hope that will also impact the perception of Israel and how it impacts the fight against anti-Semitism, to show that the Israeli government, the Jewish communities are working together in order to reinforce their cooperation and their relations with Europe as a whole. I, in particular, am in Germany, and I see a relationship which has become very strong over the last years, even though there's been a very difficult burden of history to overcome. But we've seen many different events which show that you can rise above hatred, rise above hatred of the other, and begin to forge a different destiny for both of our peoples. So I would hope that this conference will be successful. And I hope that this will also lead to a broader and deeper discussion on this very important issue in a way that dramatically contributes to our welfare and our prosperity of our societies. Thank you very much.
Ja, Jeremy Sacharow war das, der israelische Botschafter in Berlin am Schluss. Und er hat gesagt, Antisemitismus richtet sich nicht nur gegen Juden, sondern auch gegen die deutsche Demokratie und Toleranz. Davor haben wir den deutschen Außenminister Heiko Maas unter anderem gehört. Er fordert eine gemeinsame europäische Strategie gegen Antisemitismus. Ein Thema also, das uns alle angeht. Wir schalten jetzt nach Tel Aviv zu Susanne Glass, unserer ARD-Studioleiterin dort. Sie berichtet seit 2016 aus Israel. Und sie hat den Gipfel mitorganisiert. Hallo Susanne.
Hallo nach München.
Susanne, Corona hat euch ja einen Strich durch die Rechnung gemacht bei der Organisation eures Gipfels. Ihr wolltet ihn eigentlich vor Ort in Tel Aviv durchführen. Jetzt ist daraus ein virtuelles Event geworden. Wie läuft das denn bisher? Wie zufrieden bist du da?
Also ich muss sagen, ich bin einerseits überwältigt, weil wir haben nach dem ersten Abend gestern so viele positive Rückmeldungen bekommen, noch einige Anmeldungen mehr, Leute, die gesagt haben, sie wollen nächstes Jahr unbedingt dabei sein, und sehr viele auch, die gesagt haben, sie haben jetzt vieles zum Nachdenken mitgenommen und sind auch ein bisschen von ihren eigenen Ansichten wieder etwas abgerückt. Das soll es ja auch sein. Aber ich muss schon sagen, mit Corona, das war natürlich etwas frustrierend, weil die Konferenz war für Ende März organisiert. Wir hatten alle eingeladen, die Hotelzimmer waren gebucht. Alle aus ganz Europa hatten zugesagt, und dann mussten wir es kurzfristig verschieben. Jetzt ein letzter Satz. Ich bin irrsinnig stolz auf unser Technikteam, weil hier im Studio sieht es aus. Ja? Man läuft überall über Kabel drüber, und was man da alles zuschalten muss, diesen Panel, den anderen Panel. Aber es funktioniert.
Ja, das tut es, haben wir ja gerade gesehen. Was habt ihr euch denn grundsätzlich dabei gedacht bei dem Israelisch-Europäischen Mediengipfel, als ihr die Idee hattet?
Also wir haben es ja jetzt immer wieder gehört, Antisemitismus ist ekelerregend und widerlich, und er nimmt leider zu. Und wir haben gesagt, wir müssen alle etwas dagegen tun. Gleichzeitig sollten wir auch unsere Medienstandards immer wieder hinterfragen. Wir müssen schauen, wie wir mit der jüngeren Generation, mit Social Media im Gespräch bleiben. Also etwas zum Brückenbauen in polarisierten Gesellschaften, denn meine Erfahrung, und jetzt bin ich ja wirklich schon sehr viele Jahre Korrespondentin im Ausland, ist, wenn Menschen zusammenkommen und miteinander sprechen, dann sieht das immer häufig wieder anders aus, als wenn sie sich nur über Twitter oder Facebook irgendwelche Kurznachrichten schicken, und da kann man sehr, sehr viel erreichen, und ich glaube, dass auch kleine Initiativen große Wirkung haben können, und darauf hoffe ich.
Du hast gerade schon gesagt, ihr habt echt viele positive Rückmeldungen gestern Abend schon bekommen. Was war denn für dich das bisherige Highlight?
Oh, da gibt es sehr viele, aber ich muss sagen, also das Gespräch mit dem Holocaust-Überlebenden Naftali Fürst, das wir gestern Abend hatten, das hat mich schon sehr bewegt. Ich habe immer wieder mit Holocaust-Überlebenden Interviews gemacht, aber diese Geschichten zu hören, das lässt niemanden kalt. Und dann noch die Tatsache, dass Naftali Fürst gesagt hat, er spricht perfekt Deutsch, aber er wollte nach seiner Erfahrung mit der Shoah nie wieder Deutsch sprechen. Und er hat es im Interview mit Elia Havemann dann doch getan. Das bewegt mich immer noch, siehst es ja. Ich denke, das zeigt auch über all die Jahre, wie Israel und Deutschland doch wieder etwas enger zusammengefunden haben und wie wichtig diese Partnerschaft ist. Und die wollen wir ja auch weiter vertiefen.
Nun gibt es leider ja nur noch wenige Holocaust-Überlebende, mit denen man wirklich auch noch sprechen kann. Das ist eben der Lauf der Dinge. Gab es da auch irgendwelche Strategien? Gab es da gestern Ideen, wie man dann trotzdem mit dem Holocaust umgehen kann, ohne solche Zeitzeugengespräche?
Ja, ich fand das sehr spannend. Also wir haben ja Eva Stories präsentiert gestern, ein Unternehmer aus Israel, der versucht jetzt quasi über Social Media die junge Generation zu bekommen. Und in einer der Diskussionen hat eine Knesset-Abgeordnete, eine junge Knesset-Abgeordnete gesagt, sie glaubt, dass Social Media möglicherweise für die junge Generation mindestens genauso aufrüttelnd den Holocaust also das Erinnern an den Holocaust aufrechterhalten kann, wie das Gespräch mit lebenden Zeitzeugen, weil die für beide Seiten diese Gespräche manchmal auch sehr, sehr schwierig zu verkraften sind. Und sie glaubt, dass Social Media, wenn man es richtig einsetzt, da sehr viel erreichen kann. Das habe ich mir so auch noch nicht vorgestellt, aber da denke ich drüber nach.
Ein Thema bei euch auf dem Gipfel ist ja auch das Verhältnis zwischen Israel und Europa. Wir haben gerade Heiko Maas gehört, der zum Beispiel ja eine europäische Strategie gegen Antisemitismus fordert. Du bist jetzt schon lange für uns in Israel vor Ort. Du kennst sozusagen beide Perspektiven. Was würdest du denn sagen? Wie steht es gerade um die Beziehungen der beiden Seiten und was braucht es da vielleicht noch?
Also man darf sich als Europa nichts vormachen. Das wichtigste Partnerland für Israel sind weiterhin die USA. Und zwischen Präsident Trump in den USA und hier Premier Netanyahu besteht ja auch weit mehr als eine politische Freundschaft. Europa sieht man als wichtig an und wertschätzt die Beziehungen. Aber was aus Europa kommt, zum Beispiel hat Europa ja extrem davor gewarnt, dass die Annexion, die geplant war, hier lange Zeit von palästinensischen Gebieten, Europa nicht zulassen würde. Das wird in Israel zwar gehört, aber nicht wirklich besonders, ich würde mal sagen, wahrgenommen oder ernst genommen. Was aber sehr interessant ist, ist nach den USA, das wichtigste Partnerland für Israel ist Deutschland. Und jetzt, wir haben es ja gehört in der Rede des israelischen Botschafters in Berlin, der hat gesagt, es gibt ein Friedensabkommen zwischen Israel und den Vereinigten Arabischen Emiraten. Das hat Trump vermittelt. Das nimmt jetzt wieder ein bisschen den Druck heraus. Also die Annexion steht jetzt nicht mehr ganz vorne auf der Prioritätenliste der Politik. Und ich glaube, jetzt kann auch Europa wieder versuchen, vielleicht mit Israel auf einem anderen Niveau zu verhandeln. Das hat der Botschafter gesagt und ich denke, das wird eine spannende Zeit werden.
Noch eine Frage zum Schluss. Jetzt ist sozusagen Halbzeit bei euch auf dem Gipfel. Habt ihr denn schon einen für nächstes Jahr in Planung?
Ja, natürlich haben wir einen für nächstes Jahr in Planung, und zwar im Oktober in Tel Aviv hoffentlich. Und wir haben auch schon die ersten Anmeldungen dafür. Und nicht nur jetzt von Interessenten, sondern was mich auch stolz macht, tatsächlich von Politikern, die gesagt haben, sie möchten nächstes Jahr hier nach Tel Aviv kommen. Lass uns hoffen, dass es möglich sein wird.
Wir drücken euch die Daumen. Dankeschön, Susanne Glass in Tel Aviv.
Danke.
Und danke euch fürs Zuschauen. Noch bis morgen läuft die Israelisch-Europäische Medienkonferenz in Tel Aviv. Wenn ihr mal noch weitere Panels anschauen wollt, weitere Keynotes, dann findet ihr auf BR24 alle Infos dazu, wie ihr das machen könnt. Danke, dass ihr hier dabei wart und einen schönen Abend noch.